When disaster struck Turkey in 2023, hope seemed buried beneath tons of rubble. But one brave dog from Mexico defied the odds, becoming a hero in the darkest of days. This is the true story of Proteo, the rescue dog who gave everything to save lives. The earth had barely stopped trembling when the rescue teams began to arrive. It was February 2023, and Turkey lay in ruins. Two powerful earthquakes had struck just hours apart, shaking the cities of Kahramanmaraş and Gaziantep to their foundations. Buildings that had once stood tall were reduced to jagged piles of concrete and twisted steel. Streets were buried under debris, and everywhere the air was thick with dust, despair, and desperate cries for help. From around the world, nations sent their best. Search and rescue teams from across Europe, Asia, and the Americas rushed to join the effort. Among them was a team from Mexico, a country no stranger to earthquakes and devastation. The unit included brave men and women, all highly trained, but it was their four-legged companion who drew immediate attention. Proteo, a Belgian Malinois with intelligent eyes and a muscular build, Proteo was no ordinary dog. He had been trained for years by the Mexican army to detect the faintest signs of life beneath rubble. His nose could pick up the scent of survivors hidden beneath layers of concrete, and his instincts were sharper than any human equipment. As the Mexican team stepped onto Turkish soil, they felt the weight of responsibility heavy on their shoulders. But they also felt hope. Because with Proteo at their side, they knew miracles were possible. The first day was a blur of chaos. Rescuers rushed between collapsed buildings, voices rising in a frantic chorus, calls for silence to hear faint cries, commands barked between teammates, and, most heartbreakingly, the pleas of families begging them to search faster. Proteo wasted no time. The moment his handler gave the signal, he sprang into action, weaving nimbly over unstable debris, his nose low to the ground, his ears pricked forward. He ignored the noise, the dust, even the biting cold. His entire focus was on one thing: life. With every step, he searched for the subtle clues no machine could detect: the scent of breath, the warmth of a body, the faint vibration of a heartbeat beneath the rubble. Hours passed, like minutes. Suddenly, Proteo's body stiffened. He barked sharply, once, twice, then began digging furiously at a section of debris. His handler, a seasoned rescuer named Sergeant Ramirez, rushed to his side. "Proteo found someone!" he shouted. Teams converged instantly, clearing away concrete slabs with frantic speed. Minutes later, the face of a young woman emerged from beneath the rubble. Alive, shaken, injured, but alive. Cheers erupted from the rescuers, and tears streamed down the faces of onlookers. In that moment, Proteo was not just a dog. He was a symbol of hope. Word of Proteo's success spread quickly. Other rescue teams, inspired by his determination, redoubled their efforts. Turkish families, once frozen by fear, began to believe that miracles could still happen amid the ruins. Wherever Proteo went, eyes followed him with reverence. Children clung to their parents, whispering, "The hero dog is here." And Proteo did not disappoint. Over the next 2 days, he continued to find survivors. A boy trapped beneath a fallen stairwell, an elderly man pinned under a collapsed beam, a mother shielding her child beneath a crumbled wall. Each rescue felt like a small victory against overwhelming tragedy. Each life saved was a light in the darkness. Proteo's team worked tirelessly, barely resting between operations. And Proteo himself, though exhausted, never faltered. His paws were cut and bleeding from climbing over jagged debris. Dust clung to his coat, and his breath came in ragged pants. But still, he pressed on. because Proteo knew what was at stake, and he refused to give up. As dawn broke on the third day, a bitter cold swept through the ruins. Snow had begun to fall, dusting the wreckage in a thin layer of white. Proteo shivered once, but shook it off and kept moving. There were still people out there, still lives waiting to be saved. Sergeant Ramirez watched his partner with a mixture of pride and concern. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "Rest when you need to." But Proteo's eyes remained fixed ahead, determined and unyielding. They moved to a new sector, a neighborhood that had been almost entirely flattened by the quake. Hopes were fading. Rescuers feared there were no survivors left to find, but Proteo refused to accept that. He climbed over slabs of concrete, squeezed through narrow gaps, and sniffed relentlessly at the frozen ground. And then, once again, he barked, a sharp, urgent sound that pierced the air like a siren. "Here!" Sergeant Ramirez called out. "Proteo's got something!" The team sprang into action. Working together, they cleared away the debris, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Minutes felt like hours. Then, buried beneath the wreckage, they found her. A teenage girl clinging to life, her eyes wide with disbelief as she was pulled free. Proteo stood nearby, tail wagging slowly, as if to say, "You're safe now." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Even the other rescue teams, hardened by days of sorrow, could not hold back their emotions. Proteo had done it again. By nightfall, the name Proteo was on everyone's lips. News crews filmed him at work, capturing the heroic dog in action. Social media buzzed with videos and photos of Proteo in the rubble, his eyes sharp, his body poised for action. "Hero dog from Mexico saves lives in Turkey," the headlines declared. But for Proteo, there was no glory in his mission. There was only the next life to save, only the next heartbeat waiting beneath the rubble. The bitter winds of winter swept across the wreckage, rattling broken windows and stirring dust into the cold air. It had been days since the first quake, and every passing hour felt heavier on the shoulders of the rescue teams. Fatigue carved deep lines into the faces of the men and women working tirelessly amid the ruins. But no one felt the weight of exhaustion more than the heroes on four legs. Proteo was tired. His paws were raw, his breathing labored, but his eyes burned with the same relentless fire. He would not stop, not while there was even the faintest hope of saving another life. The morning began like so many others since the disaster, with new reports of survivors possibly trapped under fresh zones of debris. The team moved quickly to a collapsed apartment complex, once home to dozens of families. Now it was a jagged mountain of shattered stone and twisted metal. Rescue teams from different nations were already combing through the site, their faces grim. Hopes had faded to embers. But as soon as Proteo arrived, something changed. His nose lifted into the wind, his ears twitched, and without hesitation, he bounded toward a section of rubble that had been dismissed as too unstable. "Careful, Proteo," Sergeant Ramirez called after him, his voice tight with concern. But Proteo trusted his instincts more than any map or caution sign. He sniffed intently at a small gap between slabs of concrete, then barked, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. "There's someone alive!" Ramirez shouted. The rescuers sprang into action, adrenaline surging through their tired bodies. They worked in tense silence, knowing the structure could collapse at any moment. Proteo, as always, stayed close, his body coiled and alert, guiding them with every move. Minutes stretched into agonizing hours. Finally, a sound, faint but clear. A human voice. Hope surged through the team like an electric current. As they cleared away debris, a terrible noise cracked through the air. a deep, ominous rumble. The rescue commander shouted, "Evacuate! The structure's giving way!" Chaos erupted. Rescuers scrambled to safety, pulling back from the unstable ruin. But Sergeant Ramirez's eyes stayed locked on Proteo. Days after the quake, long after the dust had settled and the rubble began to clear, Proteo's name still echoed across 2 continents. What began as a whisper of admiration among rescuers had swelled into a chorus of global tribute. In Mexico City, people gathered in the town squares, holding candles and flowers. Photos of Proteo, proud in his rescue vest, stood framed beside flags and handwritten notes of gratitude. Some left dog treats and small toys at makeshift memorials. Others, children mostly, drew pictures of him with bright suns and soaring wings. One note, scrawled in a child's shaky handwriting, read, "Proteo, you are my hero. Thank you for being brave for us." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a nation's heart. In schools across Mexico, teachers shared Proteo's story. Children listened wide-eyed as they learned about the brave dog who had crossed an ocean to help people he had never met, people who spoke a different language in a faraway land. "But how did he know they needed him?" one child asked. The teacher smiled softly. "Because heroes don't see borders," she replied. "They only see people in need." In art classes, students painted murals of Proteo leading rescuers through clouds of dust, standing beneath the Mexican and Turkish flags, waving side by side. The story of Proteo wasn't just about bravery, it was about unity. It was about the power of compassion, stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger even than death. News outlets around the world continued to share his legacy. Journalists reported from Turkey, where survivors spoke tearfully of the brave dog who had given his life in their darkest hour. In interviews, families shared photos of loved ones Proteo had helped save. A young girl, clutching a stuffed animal tightly to her chest, whispered to the camera, "Because of Proteo, I have my father back. He's our angel." Even far from the disaster zone, Proteo's story inspired action. Donations poured into relief organizations, not just for Turkey, but for training future search and rescue teams globally. In Mexico, the government announced a new initiative, the Proteo program. Its mission was to expand the country's canine rescue units, training more dogs to follow in Proteo's paw prints. But no matter how many future heroes would come, none would replace him. On a bright, clear morning in Mexico City, thousands gathered for a formal ceremony to honor Proteo. Soldiers in crisp uniforms stood at attention. Beside them, rescue dogs sat proudly with their handlers, their ears perked and eyes alert. A large portrait of Proteo hung above the stage, draped with garlands of white flowers. The president stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Proteo showed the world the courage that beats in every Mexican heart," he said. "He taught us that bravery has no limits and love knows no borders." The crowd erupted in applause, some wiping away tears. As the Mexican flag waved in the breeze, a military band played a solemn tribute. Then, in a moment that captured hearts worldwide, a group of search and rescue dogs barked in unison, a final salute to their fallen brother. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Turkey did not forget Proteo's sacrifice. In the city of Kahramanmaraş, local artists painted a massive mural on the wall of a school that had narrowly escaped collapse. The mural showed Proteo standing tall amid the rubble, the Turkish and Mexican flags flying proudly behind him. Children helped paint colorful flowers at the base of the image, their faces lit with joy. "He was one of us," a teacher said softly. "Proteo may have come from far away, but he belongs to us all now." A plaque beneath the mural bore simple, powerful words: "In memory of Proteo, the brave heart who crossed the world to save ours." In the weeks that followed, Proteo's story continued to inspire not only rescuers and dog trainers, but ordinary people facing challenges of their own. Posts flooded social media from people sharing how Proteo had given them strength to keep going, to push through difficult days, to believe in selfless courage. Some found the motivation to volunteer in local shelters, some to donate to disaster relief, others simply to look at their own pets with newfound appreciation. A common sentiment spread through the comments: if Proteo could give everything to help strangers, we can all do a little more for each other. Back at the Mexican Military Training Center, a special corner was dedicated to Proteo's memory. There, future rescue dogs trained beneath a banner bearing his image. Handlers shared his story with every new recruit, telling of the dog who never gave up, even in the face of overwhelming danger. And though Proteo himself had passed, his spirit lived on in every bark, every sniff, every brave paw step over broken ground. He had become a symbol, not just of Mexican heroism, but of the unbreakable bond between humans and their loyal canine companions. 1 year later, at the anniversary of the earthquake, a global moment of silence was held in Proteo's honor. From Mexico City to Istanbul, from small villages to major cities, people paused to remember the hero dog. And as the world fell silent, something extraordinary happened. In training centers, rescue dogs across the globe barked, almost as if they too were paying tribute. It was as if, for a brief, magical moment, the world was united, by loss, by gratitude, and by hope. A hope that no matter how dark the day, there will always be heroes who rise. Some on 2 legs, some on 4. Proteo had not moved. He stood his ground, barking furiously at the spot where the voice had come from. "Proteo, come!" Ramirez cried, panic thick in his throat. But Proteo didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He kept barking, desperately, as if willing the team not to give up. Then, the earth shuddered. With a thunderous roar, part of the building collapsed. Dust and debris filled the air, choking out sight and sound. When the dust settled, the world seemed to stop. "Proteo!" Ramirez screamed. No answer. He rushed forward, heart pounding like a war drum, ignoring the warnings from his team. He clawed at the rubble with his bare hands, calling Proteo's name over and over. And then, through the gray haze, he saw him. Proteo lay still beneath a broken beam, his eyes half closed but his body facing the exact spot where the survivor's voice had been heard. Ramirez dropped to his knees beside his partner. "No, no, boy. Stay with me," he whispered hoarsely, tears streaking down his dust-caked face. Against all odds, Proteo's ears flicked. Weakly, he shifted his head. With the last of his strength, he let out a soft, breathless bark. It was barely a whisper of sound, but it was enough. Enough for the team to redouble their efforts. "Dig! Now!" Ramirez roared. Fueled by grief and determination, they worked like men possessed. Minutes later, they pulled free a young man, bruised, battered, but alive. Alive because of Proteo. They carried Proteo from the rubble as gently as if he were made of glass. Ramirez cradled him in his arms, tears streaming freely now. "You did it, boy," he choked out. "You saved him." Proteo's tail gave a faint, final wag. And then, with a quiet sigh, the hero's eyes closed for the last time. Silence fell over the sight. Rescuers from every nation stood still, heads bowed in respect. Even the survivors, battered and bruised, wept for the brave dog who had given everything. News of Proteo's sacrifice spread like wildfire. Reporters scrambled to cover the story, cameras capturing the tear-streaked faces of the rescuers, and the solemn journey as they carried Proteo's body from the ruins. Across Turkey and Mexico, vigils were held. Candles flickered beside photos of Proteo in his rescue vest, his sharp eyes forever captured in images of bravery. Children in Mexico drew pictures of Proteo with angel wings. Murals sprang up on city walls, depicting the heroic dog surrounded by hearts and halos. On social media, millions shared tributes, using hashtags like Proteo Hero, Fallen but Not Forgotten, Proteo the Rescue Dog. The President of Mexico himself issued a statement. Proteo fulfilled his mission as a member of the Mexican rescue team. He gave his life to save others. We honor him as a true hero of our nation and the world. In the following days, Proteo's legacy only grew. His story inspired donations for earthquake survivors and for training future rescue dogs. Training centers across Mexico were renamed in his honor, and most importantly, his courage reminded the world that even in the darkest moments, hope can come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it wears a vest. Sometimes it walks on four paws. Sometimes it barks when the world needs it most. Proteo was gone, but his spirit lived on, in every life he had touched, in every survivor he had saved, and in every heart that would remember the bravery of one extraordinary dog from Mexico.